Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about burned out moms. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that a thinker? Yes, we need to think about this. And luckily for me, I have my special guest here, Christy, who's going to help us think about this in a whole new light. So, with that being said, thank you so much, Christy, for coming onto my show, sharing your time and your perspective with me. I truly am appreciating this moment. So let's just dive right in. When you hear the words burned out mom, oh, what does that make you think about?
Well, so for starters, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so happy to be here. So, when you ask me that question, like, what do I think about burned out moms? So, the first thing I want to say is parenting, being a mom, I think it's such an incredible job. It is absolutely, from my opinion, my perspective, one of the most challenging things a person can do. And obviously, everybody's mom journey looks very, very different. We all, approach this in a different way, and it affects all of us. When I think about burned out moms in particular, so I really spend a lot of time working with working moms in particular. So moms well, all moms are working moms, right? But I'm thinking about in particular moms who work outside the home, who are really trying to juggle, all of these responsibilities, all of these demands. And it's just it's a lot, And so I feel like over time, more and more moms are taking on these outside the home responsibilities, but the expectations in society have not necessarily shifted proportionately with that. And I think that there are a lot of moms who think about this as, they think about stress and burnout as these like interchangeable kind of terms. And I think a lot of people feel like burnout is very normalized and it's just something that we have to deal with. It's just something we have to put up with as moms. But
Yeah.
the reality is that burnout is so much more than regular stress. So regular stress is going to be something that is situational. It's going to be, generally speaking, temporary. But when we experience burnout, that comes as a result of chronic unresolved stress. And so it's like that, it's always there. And the symptoms can be more challenging. They can also be more challenging to cope with and to overcome and that sort of thing. So that's really what I'm thinking about.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you actually provided the difference between just regular stress and burnt outness because it's like you said, we have this idea of just, oh, it's normal. It's normal to feel this way. It's normal to be exhaustedly exhausted. You know what I mean? It's normal to just feel
Mhm.
like you're always in survival mode. And I think the fact that we're just bringing this to light and we're helping other people, other parents, other mothers out there realize, like, no, sweetie, there's a way to manage this. There's a way to deal with the way that you're seeing your situation, the way you're managing your situation. There's nothing wrong with trying to juggle everything. You know what I mean? Because let's be honest, life requires us to be very multitaskable individuals. So it's just like, okay, it's about, I think, coming down to where's our morals? You know what I mean? Where's our values? And what really
Mhm.
holds value in our life. You know what I mean? And being a mom, I think I really had to break that down for myself because I was getting to the point of being burnt out. Like, oh my goodness, I'm getting pulled in every direction. Like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
And when we get to that point of like feeling like we can't do this anymore, what do? We shut down. We shut our
Mhm.
children down. We shut our families down. We shut our hubs, our spouses. Everyone gets shut off and down because it's like we a ticking time bomb at that point. So it's like,
Mhm.
how can you really tell if a mother is burnt out for the individuals out there who don't really understand what it really looks like?
Yeah, so for starters, all of those things that you just talked about, so all moms, I think, experience a certain amount of being tired, right? Because we're busy. We're very tired. But when we are burned out, it's more than just being tired. It is this chronic state of extreme exhaustion that just does not go away with a nap, with a good night's rest. It's just always there, right? So that's really, I would say, the first telltale sign. But then there are other things that you might notice too. So, Whereas a certain amount of stress, like again, because we're talking about the differences between the two, stress is something that a lot of times motivates people, whereas burnout does the opposite. When people are burned out, they tend to feel less motivated. A lot of times they might have these negative mindsets or these negative attitudes. They might be more cynical. They might, start losing interest in things that they really used to enjoy, tasks and responsibilities that they really used to enjoy. They might notice that they have less energy. They might notice that they are being less patient at home, with their spouses, with their kids. They're going to have a harder time being emotionally present. And I know that those are things that a lot of people really struggle with and they're really concerned about because not only is it about how am I being affected by this, but then it's how is this then spilling over into other areas of my life? Primarily at home, in our relationships with our spouse and with our kids, or with our partners. And so that's something that can really be difficult. But, again, these two things, stress and burnout, although they can look so similar, or they can, these terms are used interchangeably, but they can actually present a little bit differently based on, just how, just how, I guess intense would be the word I would use, how chronic and intense it really is.
Oh, absolutely. And especially depending on how many children you have and depending on how many obligations you have. I mean, it really does look differently for every woman because at the end of the day, we all manage our stress differently. We all manage, certain tasks and responsibilities differently. We manage, our lives differently. So, yes, you have a very valid point. It's going to be very subjective when it comes to each its own. But I think like you were talking about, it's just being aware of that chronicness. You know what I mean? If it's been exceeding over a certain amount of
Mhm.
time, I think those are just real wake up calls. Like if you're a spouse and you see your wife, you know what I mean, just stressed out for longer than 6 months, like this is continuous, and now you're thinking like this is her personality. Like, no, this is not her personality. This is just something that she's not dealing with. And I think just having that empathy for mothers is something that we need in this world because you can put that you're a mom on a resume, but it's not going to hold any value. You know what I mean? It's not going to hold much value because they don't
Mhm.
consider the fact that you're a chauffeur. They don't consider the fact that you're a chef. They don't consider the fact that you clean up and you're a housekeeper. You know what I mean? They don't consider how you do taxes. They don't consider
Mhm.
anything that's very detailed in just being a mother. So I think just reminding ourselves that, like, you know what? Something is going on. You know what I mean? Like something's not right with my wife or
Mhm.
something's not right with my mom, especially if you have older kids and now she's dealing with younger kids because that happens. You know what I mean? That's a different type of burnout. You know what I mean? She's handling things differently. And I think people don't realize like this is something that's been going on for way too long. You know what I mean? Way too long. And they just put
Well,
piling it on. Go
yeah, and
ahead.
I think, to go along with that, you were talking about how, people have different numbers of kids and people, are going to have different responsibilities and to go along with that, I think it's also important to mention that and people have varying degrees of support. People have different kinds
Yes.
of access to resources and
Yes.
available to them and things like that. Some people have spouses who are very supportive, who want to be helpful, who want to be stepping in at home, who want to help take on some of that burden that maybe the moms are carrying around, but maybe they don't know how, or maybe, they'll try one thing and then it'll go kind of go away or stop, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And that's very different than the moms who have spouses who maybe or partners who maybe are not as supportive and who are not trying to really help out. And then of course other kinds of supports. Some people have close friends and family who are around to help them, with certain things. Other people, not so much. Myself personally, like I'm fortunate to have a very supportive partner. However, we don't have friends and family locally to really help us. I mean, we have some, but it's just, they're busy. They have a lot of things going on themselves. And
Yeah.
so when something comes up with our kids, with daycare or school or whatever, it's just us. It's us figuring it out together, And so that can really, play a difference in these things too. I think for burned out working moms, a lot of times it can feel very isolating because either,
Yeah.
the supports aren't available, or maybe they don't feel comfortable asking for help. They don't feel comfortable accepting help. Sometimes they feel like it's burdensome. They might feel a little bit guilty. And
Yeah.
so that can be, part of this challenge too.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you touched up on that because I was gonna lead myself into that, but I'm glad you did because I think that's something that we don't really realize or we don't talk about because people who do have that village or do have that financial stability to hire a nanny or to hire somebody to come and help them in their home, you know what I mean? That it's a different weight off of them, you know what I mean? But for the people who don't, it's really about juggling. You know what I mean? Juggling between you and your spouse or juggling between you just yourself because you know what I mean? Everybody's situation really is differently. So for the people
Mhm.
who have a village or the ones that are part of somebody else's village that may be listening in, are some great tips that they can use to really help out a burned out mom or just mamas in general?
Yeah, so I think for starters, I think it's just one of the things that's really important is to remember that, we can't always fix everybody's problems as much as we might like to, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that we can't still be helpful. Offering emotional support, even if we're not in a situation where we're able to provide, the practical support can still make a huge, huge difference. So, checking in on these moms, asking them, how are you doing? Offering support where you can, and even if they're asking for things or they're needing things that maybe you're not immediately able to provide, just again, finding other ways to sort of let them know that they're not alone. So maybe just sending them a quick text, again, thinking about you, let me know if you need anything. Like those kinds of things. Sometimes even just things like sending like a quick meme or like a funny little thing gets people laughing a little bit during the day. Those things that might seem really small can actually be very, very helpful. But then again, of course, if you are able to, offer other kinds of help and support, whether it is, helping with childcare, whether it's, maybe you come over and, you stay for a little bit so they can go take a nap or they can go get some errands done or they can go do something for themselves. All of those things might not seem like a big deal, but they can really absolutely make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, I think those are very valid points. So I think a lot of the times just those little like communications, letting them know that you're not alone in this and that everything's gonna be okay, that everything is normal. Because especially for those new mamas out there, oh my goodness, it is scary when the first day you're home alone with your baby. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
The day that I had to be alone with my son after giving birth and my husband went to work, I was just like, oh, it's just you and me, baby. You know what I mean? It
Oh,
just has
yeah.
those moments. So I guess it leads me to my next question. Have you ever felt burned out?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think back to, when my daughter was born, I think back to, my career before I had kids. So my background is in mental health, and I used to work in a community mental health agency, which traditionally those kinds of settings are known for being very high burnout. And and I was juggling a lot. I was doing different positions. I was moving forward in my career. Sometimes I was traveling, sometimes I was being on call. I was doing all these different things. But before you have kids, it feels manageable in a different kind of way. It's a lot, but it's like you go to work and then you come home and then maybe you have that time to focus on yourself and your relationships and all of those sorts of things. But when you have kids, suddenly it's very, very different because now you have more than one thing that's really, really important, And
Yeah.
so, I mean, back when my daughter was born, it was probably about a year or so, after that I decided, what? And I noticed it. I noticed it in myself. I got to a point where, every single day, every time my boss would come in and say, "Hey, can you do this thing?" I would get this negative mindset, which wasn't me. It wasn't normal for me. And when I noticed that that was becoming the norm, that's when I realized, hey, something is not working. Something's got to change. And so I made the
Yeah.
very difficult decision to leave my job. I went into private practice, and then I've been doing my own work. I've been doing my own mindset work. I've been implementing these strategies, making these kinds of changes. At the
Yeah.
same time, helping other moms do similar things in my work as a therapist. And then I'm just in a very, very different place today.
Oh, I know. I mean, I could imagine because you're over here talking about it now. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be that same mom on my show right now if you didn't have that change of mindset, that wake up call that you need. And I think I wouldn't
Mhm.
be able to have this conversation either if I didn't have that moment of wake up call, that reality check. Like, I need to move with more love. I need to move with more intentions. I need to be more aware of what's going on. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's really hard, especially if you have animals or more things to add on top of your belt, like, or taking care of your older parents, you know what I mean? That all adds up eventually. I mean, like, I feel like my cat is so invasive that he gives me the most meanest looks ever when I give my children love before him. He's like the audacity woman. So you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
even with showing my animals love, it's a lot. So I think just having that awareness, like, we need to find balance and we need to know that it's okay if we don't get to everything on our list in the day. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
okay if you don't do the dishes today. You know what? They're still going to be there tomorrow. Get to them tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's okay
Yeah.
if you don't make the bed. It's okay. Don't cry over it. You know what I mean? The saying, don't
No.
cry over spilt milk. It's okay if you don't. Just be a little bit more compassionate as a mom. To all my moms listening, just have a little bit more compassion on yourself because you know what? You're doing the best you can. And I think that's one thing that I think, a lot of women out there just need to remember. So I guess my next question is, what is one thing that's just underrated of just being a mom, in your opinion?
Well, I would say um, probably just the mental load that we're all carrying, right? So we are carrying so much around that people don't even see. A lot of times, and that deserves credit too for all of that because the reality is that you can have two partners who are both working, say, 40 hours a week outside of the home, whatever it might be. And generally speaking, there's one person, very, not always, but very, very often, it is the mom who is taking on this additional role of being essentially like the manager of the household. And so they're the ones who are thinking about these things, making sure that things are getting done, making sure that things don't slip through the cracks. One of the examples that I think about, when I think about mental load, is I think about, if my daughter gets invited to a birthday party, maybe I ask my husband to take her to the birthday party and maybe he will say yes, and that's great. But there's more to it than that because then it's usually I'm the one who's saying, okay, well, let me make sure I RSVP. First, let me see my daughter even wants to go. Then it's like, okay, I need to RSVP to the birthday party. And okay, now I need to remember to get a gift. And now I need to make sure that she makes a card and the gift is wrapped. And the day of the birthday party, I need to make sure that he knows where he's going and what time he has to be there. And does he
Mhm.
have directions and all of those kinds of things. And all of those things. And so the idea, this example of the birthday party, there's so much more that goes into it. And all of those things take up space in our heads that that we have to make sure that we're not losing sight of because that is just this additional weight that we have to carry.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so moms definitely need to be given credit for all of that too.
Oh, absolutely. I think those are very valid points. And I'm really enjoying our conversation, but it sucks to know that the time is really catching up to us. I mean, I feel like we could continue on talking
Okay.
about this in different branches and areas. So, yeah, this is really a
Yeah.
great topic for everyone to really think about and how they can reflect on it with and then consider how it resonates with their own lives. You know what I mean? So, what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
I think that it's back to what you were saying about just giving ourselves a little bit of grace and things like that. I think that it's important to remember that there are many, many ways to be a good mom. We're not always going to get it perfectly all the time, and we don't have to. Perfection doesn't exist. It's important to remember that, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing the best we can. So as long as we're doing the best we can and we're doing our all for the day that's given, then hey, that's all that you should worry about. Today, when you wake up, worry about what's on your agenda for today. Tomorrow, let it come when tomorrow comes. Yesterday, it's already gone. Don't even think about it. It's done and over. Let it be a memory for when you are in the nostalgic mood, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it first from Christy and I. And for you, if you want to check out more about what Christy has to offer the world, because how could you not with this conversation, right? How could you not? Please go check her out. I have her access to her website in the description if you're listening in audio or if you're on the YouTube watching the video. Just check her out to go boop right there to her website. Or if you're already on my website, just click on her lovely photo boop right there. It goes directly to her website so that you can obviously continue on thinking with all the great content that she has to offer the world. So, with that being said, bye.